Greetings. My name is Carl Baker. I will be reviewing the Globe Cultural Dimensions for Practices for the comparison of the United States and Japan. I chose Japan because I have a fondness for its culture, its art, literature, and its history. Hopefully, you will find this information insightful. You will see me once again at the conclusion. Thank you.
Now, as you can see to the right of my video, introduction video, the flag of Japan, the land of the rising sun. And next we go to the actual island of Japan, just there south of Russia, east of North and South Korea. Tokyo being the capital, very bold font in the center there. Little known fact, it used to be known as Edo prior to a revolution. Here are some basic facts about the nation of Japan, where it's located, its current government, the lack of ethnic groups, but the religion is more interesting. You've got Shintoism and Buddhism, where many of the Japanese actually identify as being both, which is why if you add up the numbers, they're well over 100, because basically people were filling in both spots. Japanese language spoken. The Olympic count for this year, 12 gold, 8 silver, 21 bronze. They finished 7th overall in the medal count, 6 if you're just looking at the gold. Now here's my graph of the United States versus Japan for the Globe Cultural Dimension practices. I'm just going to go over these very briefly. There will be more detail in the further slides. PO, performance orientation, both scored above average, but United States scored in the high range. FO, future orientation, both scored above average towards the high. GE, gender egalitarianism, both scored below average, with Japan scoring even lower. I'll explain a little bit more about that later. AO, which is the assertive orientation, that's a huge gap for these two, for the extremes. One's very high, one's very low. And I'll definitely explain that one. The institutional collectivism, Japan is right there at the very high, the high. United States is just below average, barely. A different form of collectivism, which is in-group collectivism, which is next. Scores are quite different. Both of them are below average, with the United States being even lower. PD, which is power distance, Japan being right there at the average, and the United States not too far away. Next we have HO, which is the humane orientation. Both of them are slightly above average, but not much difference there. And the last one, UA, which is uncertainty avoidance. They're both right there at average. This is really the closest one for them of the dimensions. Now, these slides I'm going to be going over for each of the dimensions. I got the characteristic high and low for each of them from a website that's listed in my resources, references. The Grovewell website. It's a PDF. It's a very good PDF if you want to learn more about this one. I'd suggest reading it. But like I said, in this one, both of them scored above average towards the high. If you look through the characteristics for the high, United States and Japan pretty much hit all but one. United States definitely hits the last one, which is expect direct and explicit communication. Japan is not that. They actually more indirect and more subtle communication, which is why they scored slightly lower. But otherwise, they're right up there in the high with the United States. I said future orientation, both of them scored above average towards the high. They model all of these characteristics, and and both cultures are very adaptive, very adaptive. Japan has shown how adaptive they are, with all the different technologies and stuff they've come up with, and the United States is constantly adapting. Now, with this one, gender egalitarianism, there are some concerns here. Now, Japan really, the way their culture was previously, women have just recently begun to get more and more into the workforce. They really didn't have the head start that the United States women have. And even so, with that, United States women, I mean, the high-level positions in government and everything are really still held by men. But we're making strides for that. There's got to be a reason why they're not there. And is it some type of biased? I'm not sure, or maybe they just I don't know. I do not wish to make any conclusions why in the United States. Now, Japan, it's quite obvious. Now they're forcing them because they know there's an issue. They know there's an issue. They're putting forth legislation trying to get, a third of all the public management into that as being women. The private industry is not going to be that way, but they're still making strides. Assertive orientation. Like I said, this is the biggest gap. And I think, the low assertiveness really shows Japan, save faith. That is typically a Japanese saying, to save face. They don't want to lose honor. They're very loyal. They're very predictable. Whereas United States, we try to control the environment. We push things to the limits. We're just a very bold culture. Now, neither one of them is wrong. It's just different. Just different. Now, institutional collectivism. Japan scored through the roof on this one, and they clearly show all the characteristics of this one as well. United States scored average. They're just they're not as loyal towards the institution. They don't have the seniority benefits that the Japan culture does. Like I said, they start out in one position, low-level pay, and they don't have a problem because they know throughout the years their pay is going to go up and up and up and up because the seniority members get the promotions, they get the good jobs. That's just how their culture works. Over here, it can be a feeding frenzy for jobs sometimes, and we're not as loyal to a company as maybe we were in the past. Now, in-group collectivism, both scored below average. It's clear why Japan does. They truly trust one another, so they don't need that collectivism in the workplace. They know when one guy finishes it, the next guy is going to put just as good a work in. They're really trusting. So it makes them more almost autonomous for their groups on this form of collectivism. The United States, we have a tendency to be loners, do things on our own. I mean, we definitely can be team players. We just sometimes choose to believe that if you want something done right, you do it yourself. Now, power distance. They both scored at the average. Japan, one interesting fact about them, that, like I said, the power structure from low to high, there's that huge gap from getting from the lowliest position all the way to top, and you can't really actually go from the bottom to the top. They have that gap there. You can't, but everything's set up. With the United States, I mean, we have the concept of the 1%. We also have a large middle class. Japan really doesn't have much of a middle class at all, actually. Now we go on a humane orientation. Both of us are very caring. We're about average on this. We're very caring. Now in Japan, one thing that's interesting is, it's different from our culture in the United States, is that, when mom and pop get old, they don't send them to a nursing home. they take care of them. Usually, typically, one member will stay home and take care of them, which is why less women have been in the workplace. But now, the way the government's going, the woman can enter the workplace, and the government actually helps with in-house care, so the elderly can stay in their homes and not away from their families. Uncertainty avoidance, basically both groups don't. Neither one want uncertainty. They plan for the future, but they keep options open. That's how both cultures are able to be so adaptable. You can't be adaptable if you're constantly planning and worrying about what's going to happen in the future. We try our best to avoid stuff. We track stuff. We can be a little meticulous, but as a whole, we have to be able to adapt. Communication, tones, tact, and traditions. Now, tones, once again, we speak with harsher tones, loud, raised voices sometimes. Doesn't quite work in the Japanese culture. They're more soft-spoken, less likely to be aggressive and loud towards one another. Tact is a big thing. We're very blunt. We say what's on our mind, with sometimes little regard to insulting even people who are higher than us. In Japan, that never happens. And then again with traditions, we have traditions. The picture shows it clearly. They bow, we shake hands. It's just how they greet each other. Now, I expect anyone from the United States going over there to bow, and then anybody from Japan coming over here to shake hands. It's just something that you would adapt to. There shouldn't be much of a communication problem once we just really hone in on those things, for the Americans, toning it down a bit, being a little more cautious in how we say things. And with the Japanese coming over here, they need to be more aggressive in conversing with us. Motivation. I just really like both proverbs. They hit the nail on the head for both cultures. It's not a problem motivating a Japanese worker or an American worker. They're both easily motivated if you use the right motivations. And that's the thing, it's really different for everybody, even inside of a culture that is predominantly one way. There's still just slight nuances. Now, teamwork. I went into this and pulled these two photos up. You got one with the Japanese culture all coming together to look at the sakura or the cherry blossom festival. They watch these flowers bloom, and they really come together and do things. They're very loyal and very family and group oriented. Now we have the Miami Heat, one of the greatest teams in basketball at the time, with LeBron James, who wasn't so loyal to his team. He moved on, and that's the thing I said with American culture. You got to learn between these two cultures. One group's not going to leave you. The other one, if something looks better, there's a high potential they're going to leave. Now, it won't work in in Japan, hopping from one thing to the next. It doesn't work that way over there. Like I said, because the way seniority works. Over in the United States, it works very well. You can read the passage here, and it really fit into mine. You go over across these unbelievers, and they give you something. Don't be disrespectful. Eat it. Now, again, if they tell you it was sacrificed to their deity, as a Christian, you don't intake that, but you still are being polite about it. What I like about Japan, anime, manga, ramen, the history about the Ronins and the samurai is where I really enjoy things. Here are my references. You can view these again if you wish. And now the conclusion. I'm really out of time. I wish I could have said more, but I'm just going to end it here and say Good luck to everyone, and God bless.